Every survival expert will tell you that ice equals death, yet entire Inuit generations thrive sleeping inside solid ice domes through Arctic winters that killed explorers. When Arctic temperatures plummet to minus 40 degrees, most of us would probably die within hours. But the Inuit people figured out something brilliant thousands of years ago. They discovered that snow, yes, the same stuff that makes us shiver, could actually save their lives. Here's where it gets interesting. Igloos aren't built from just any snow. The Inuit carefully select packed, wind-hardened snow that's been compressed naturally. This isn't the fluffy powder you'd find in your backyard after a storm. We're talking about dense, almost crystalline blocks that feel more like styrofoam than what you'd expect. The weird part is that this packed snow actually insulates better than solid ice. Much better. Why does this work? Well, trapped air is the secret ingredient. Those compressed snow blocks are filled with tiny air pockets that act like thousands of miniature insulation chambers. Ice, on the other hand, conducts cold directly through its solid structure. It's like the difference between wearing a down jacket versus a thin plastic sheet. Then there's the dome shape itself. This isn't just some random architectural choice. The curved walls naturally funnel warm air upward and trap it near the ceiling, creating a heat pocket above the sleeping area. Cold air, being heavier, sinks down and flows right out through the entrance tunnel. It's basically a natural heating system that works without electricity or fuel. Speaking of that entrance tunnel, here's something most people don't realize. The tunnel entrance sits deliberately lower than the main floor inside. This creates what engineers call a cold trap. Heavy, frigid air flows down into the tunnel and stays there, while the lighter, warm air remains trapped inside the living space above. Genius, right? But here's where the construction gets really precise. Each snow block must fit perfectly against its neighbors. Even tiny gaps become thermal highways for heat to escape. The Inuit developed cutting techniques using bone knives to shape blocks that interlock so tightly you couldn't slide a piece of paper between them. One poorly fitted block could turn a cozy shelter into a death trap. Let's not forget the interior layout. The sleeping platform inside an igloo sits raised above the entrance level. This isn't just for comfort, it's strategic positioning. Since warm air rises and cold air sinks, sleeping on an elevated platform means you're literally sleeping in the warmest zone of the entire structure. The engineering here is so sophisticated that a properly built igloo can maintain inside temperatures of 60-70 degrees Fahrenheit when it's minus 40 outside. That's a temperature difference of over 100 degrees, achieved with nothing but carefully arranged snow blocks. Of course, building the perfect igloo is just the first step. Once you've got your frozen fortress, you need to figure out how to actually stay warm inside it all night long. That's where things get really creative. When that igloo's built, it's just the beginning. The Inuit knew their snow dome was only as good as what went inside it. Raw snow floor? That's a recipe for freezing to death in your sleep. Here's where things get clever. Thick caribou skins become the foundation of survival. These aren't just any animal hides. We're talking about dense, insulating pelts that create a barrier between human bodies and the cold ground below. The Inuit would layer these skins strategically, starting with fur side down directly against the snow floor. But wait, there's more to this system. A second layer goes on top, this time fur side up. Why the flip? Well, the bottom layer stops cold from seeping through, while the top layer cradles your body in soft warmth. It's like nature's version of a high-tech sleeping pad, except it actually works when temperatures drop to bone-chilling levels. Daily maintenance was crucial, though. These skins had to be beaten clean every single day. Sounds like extra work when you're already fighting for survival, right? Actually, it was life or death. Moisture from melting snow would freeze in the fur, turning your warm bedding into a cold, hard mess. Beat those skins daily, and they stayed dry and fluffy. Then there's the sleeping bag situation. Individual fur sleeping bags weren't uncommon, but communal sleeping arrangements often worked better. Families would create large sleeping areas using multiple skins sewn together. Think of it as a giant fur cocoon that multiple people could share. The thickest, most luxurious pelts went toward creating what essentially became a raised bed platform. Seal skins were incredibly valuable for this purpose because of their natural water resistance and insulating properties. Polar bear fur, when available, provided unmatched warmth, but was obviously much harder to come by. Makes sense. Hunting a polar bear with traditional tools takes serious skill and luck. Let's not forget the genius of elevation. These skin platforms weren't just thrown on the ground randomly. They were arranged to keep sleeping bodies raised above the igloo's entrance level, where cold air naturally settled. The Inuit understood basic physics. Cold air sinks, warm air rises, and the weird part is how they prepare these sleeping areas. Skins would be arranged in specific patterns, with the softest furs positioned where heads and torsos would rest. Feet areas got slightly different treatment since extremities needed extra protection from cold. But even the most perfectly arranged animal skins couldn't generate heat on their own. They could only trap and preserve warmth that already existed. So where did that crucial heat come from in the first place? The answer lies in something every family possessed, something that required no hunting, no preparation, and never ran out of fuel. When you strip away all the fancy technology and survival gear, what's the most reliable heater an Inuit family has? Their own bodies. Sounds almost too simple, right? But here's the thing. Human bodies are basically walking furnaces that pump out heat 24/7, and Inuit families figured out how to turn this biological fact into their most powerful weapon against freezing nights. 4 people sleeping together in a small igloo can crank up the inside temperature by a whopping 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the difference between deadly cold and actually comfortable. Think about it. No batteries required, no fuel to run out, and definitely no repair bills. Your body heat never breaks down on you when you need it most. The magic happens when everyone huddles close together during sleep. Adults sandwich the children between them, creating these incredible pockets of shared warmth. Every person becomes both a heater and a heat collector at the same time. The weird part is that even something as basic as breathing contributes to the warmth equation. All that exhaled air adds moisture and heat to the tiny space, slowly building up the temperature throughout the night. Smart families keep their igloos deliberately small for this exact reason. Bigger isn't better when you're trying to trap body heat. A massive igloo would just swallow up all that precious warmth, leaving everyone shivering despite their best efforts. Compact spaces mean your body heat has nowhere to escape. It bounces around the curved walls and settles right back where you need it. Let's not forget that this heating system runs completely silent. No crackling fires or humming machines to wake anyone up, just the steady, reliable warmth that comes from being human. The consistency is what makes it so brilliant. While outside temperatures might swing wildly, your body keeps pumping out heat at the same rate all night long. But here's where it gets really clever. Families arrange themselves strategically with the warmest adults on the outside edges and the kids tucked safely in the middle where all that heat concentrates. It's like creating a human furnace with the most vulnerable people right at the hottest spot. The positioning isn't random, it's calculated survival. Even during the deepest, most brutal Arctic nights, this biological heating system keeps working. No wind can blow it out, no ice can freeze it solid, and no equipment failure can shut it down. Your body heat is the one thing that stays consistent when everything else in the environment is trying to kill you. Of course, body heat alone won't cut it on the most extreme nights. The Inuit knew they needed backup systems too, and that's where some surprisingly ingenious traditional technology comes into play. When your igloo is built and your furs are laid out, there's still one more piece of the survival puzzle. The Inuit discovered something brilliant. A tiny flame could mean the difference between sleeping comfortably and barely making it through the night. Enter the seal oil lamp, basically the world's first portable heater. These weren't just regular lamps you'd find in some cozy cabin. They were carefully crafted stone or clay bowls, no bigger than a dinner plate, designed to burn seal blubber oil with maximum efficiency. The flame itself, about the size of your thumb, sometimes smaller. But here's where it gets interesting. That little flame could boost an igloo's temperature by 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Doesn't sound like much until you realize that's often the difference between freezing and surviving. The lamp sat in the center of the igloo, positioned just right to spread heat evenly without creating dangerous hotspots. The real genius wasn't just the heat, it was the control. Too much flame and you'd melt your house. Literally. The walls would start dripping, and suddenly your shelter becomes a soggy mess in sub-zero temperatures. Not exactly ideal. The Inuit learned to adjust the wick, made from dried moss or animal hair, to maintain just the right amount of heat. Then there's the multitasking aspect that modern campers would envy. That same tiny flame served as their kitchen, their clothes dryer, and their water source all rolled into one. They'd hold chunks of ice near the flame to melt drinking water, warm up frozen clothing, and even heat small portions of food. Smart, right? The lamp's placement was critical too. It couldn't be too close to the sleeping area. Nobody wants to roll over onto a flame in their sleep, but it needed to be close enough that everyone could benefit from the warmth. Usually, it went near the entrance tunnel where the coldest air naturally settled. What's fascinating is how they managed the fuel supply. Seal blubber burns slowly and steadily, but you can't just dump oil in there and hope for the best. The Inuit would carefully portion out just enough oil to last through the night, sometimes adding tiny amounts throughout the evening to keep the flame steady. The smoke was surprisingly minimal when burned correctly, though ventilation still mattered. A small hole near the top of the igloo let the minimal smoke escape while keeping most of the heat trapped inside. It's like having a perfectly tuned fireplace in a house made of snow. Of course, even the most efficient lamp means nothing without proper technique, which brings us to something even more crucial than building shelter or managing tiny flames, knowing exactly how to dress for survival in conditions that could kill you in minutes. When temperatures drop to minus 40 degrees, your regular winter jacket becomes about as useful as a paper towel in a rainstorm. The Inuit figured this out thousands of years ago, which is why their clothing system puts modern winter gear to shame. Here's where things get fascinating. They don't just throw on one thick coat and call it a day. Instead, they use a double-layer approach that's basically genius-level engineering disguised as everyday clothing. The inner layer has caribou fur facing inward, touching the skin. This traps warm air right against the body, creating a personal heating zone. Then comes the outer layer with fur facing outward, which blocks wind and reflects cold air away from the body. But wait, it gets better. The air gap between these two layers acts like nature's own insulation system. Warm air gets trapped in there and stays put, while cold air can't penetrate through. It's like wearing a portable greenhouse that moves with you. Let's talk about those parkas for a second. These aren't your typical winter coats with a zipper and some pockets. Inuit parkas are designed with incredibly long tails that can be tucked under the body while sitting or sleeping. The hood isn't just a hood either. It's engineered to create a warm air pocket around the face with fur trim that actually pre-warms the air before you breathe it in. Then there's the most brilliant part of their clothing system. Mothers carry babies inside their parkas, on their backs, sharing body heat directly. The baby stays warm without needing its own heating system, and the mother gets extra warmth from the child's body heat. Talk about a win-win situation that would make modern baby carriers look ridiculously overcomplicated. Mittens and boots follow the same double-layer principle, but they take it further. The boots are stuffed with soft grass or fur that creates air pockets around the toes. Cold feet can mean frostbite, which can mean death, so these aren't just comfort features, they're survival tools. The mittens are designed so fingers can touch each other inside, sharing warmth instead of being isolated like in regular gloves. Even the cuffs and openings are engineered to prevent heat escape. Tight wrists, snug necks, and carefully designed overlaps ensure that warm air doesn't leak out when you move. Every seam, every closure, every design element serves the single purpose of keeping heat in and cold out. The weird part is how they manage moisture. Sweating in these clothes doesn't just make you uncomfortable, it can kill you when the sweat freezes. So the furs are chosen and treated to wick moisture away from the skin while maintaining insulation properties. Of course, all this fancy clothing engineering only works if you know how to use your body properly when the real cold hits. When the oil lamp flickers low and darkness settles over the igloo, families face their biggest challenge. How do you keep warm when you're unconscious for 8 hours straight? The answer lies in becoming human heat machines through careful positioning. Inuit families don't just lie down anywhere. They transform into living furnaces by curling up tight. Knees get pulled close to the chest, arms wrap around the torso. Think human burrito, but with a serious survival purpose. This isn't comfort sleeping, it's strategic body management. Every inch of exposed skin becomes a heat leak. By tucking into tight balls, families reduce their surface area dramatically. Less skin touching cold air means less warmth escaping into the night. Simple physics, but it works like magic. Then there's the shared bedding system that turns individual sleepers into one giant heat source. Nobody gets their own space. That's a luxury they can't afford. Everyone piles onto the same thick caribou skins, creating a communal warm zone. Bodies pressed together, sharing heat through direct contact. 2 people generate more warmth than 1. 4 people? Even better. But here's where it gets really clever. The sleeping platform keeps everyone elevated above the coldest air, which always sinks to the floor. No direct contact with icy surfaces means no heat getting sucked away through conduction. The raised bed becomes their warm island in a sea of freezing temperatures. Family huddles take this concept to the extreme. Parents sandwich children between them, creating protective heat cocoons. The smallest family members, who lose heat fastest, get the warmest spots. Bigger bodies shield smaller ones from drafts and cold spots. Everyone contributes to the group furnace while staying individually warm. Well, here's the weird part. Even the way they breathe matters. Slow, steady breathing prevents heat from rushing out with each exhale. Quick, panicked breathing would pump warm air out of their bodies like a broken heater. Staying calm keeps their internal temperature stable. Nighttime movement gets reduced to absolutely necessary shifts only. Rolling around breaks the careful heat barriers they've built. Every position change lets cold air sneak into warm spots. Smart sleepers learn to stay put, even when slightly uncomfortable. The really fascinating detail? Families develop sleeping rhythms together. When one person moves, others adjust without fully waking up. They become synchronized heat-sharing units, responding to each other's needs automatically. Years of practice create these unconscious teamwork skills. Their bedtime routine becomes a carefully choreographed survival dance. Everyone knows their position, their role in the heat-sharing system, their responsibility to the group's warmth. But even the most perfect sleeping arrangement means nothing if your body itself starts working against you. The real secret lies in controlling internal processes most people never think about. Breathing patterns, heart rate, and metabolic responses that can make or break a freezing night. When temperatures drop to deadly levels, your body becomes both your greatest asset and your biggest enemy. Every breath you take can either save precious heat or drain it away faster than you'd think possible. The Inuit discovered something fascinating about breathing patterns during extreme cold. Slow, controlled breaths keep your internal furnace running efficiently. Quick, panicked breathing? That's like opening windows in a heated house. Each rapid exhale shoots warm air straight out of your lungs and into the frigid night. But here's the clever part. They learned to breathe so shallowly that barely any heat escaped at all. Your nose becomes a survival tool when the mercury plummets. Cold air rushing directly into your lungs can shock your system and steal body heat instantly. The Inuit figured out that tucking their nose into fur collars or covering it with mittens pre-warms incoming air. It's like having a personal heater attached to your face. Simple, but brilliant. Then there's the sweat problem that most people never consider. Sweating feels natural when you're bundling up or moving around, right? Wrong. In Arctic conditions, sweat becomes a death sentence. The moisture cools your skin immediately, then freezes your clothes solid. The Inuit mastered the art of staying active enough to generate heat without triggering their sweat glands. They move deliberately, never rushing, always calculating the energy cost. Movement during the coldest nights gets stripped down to absolute essentials. Every unnecessary motion burns calories your body needs for heat production. Rolling over, only when absolutely necessary. Stretching, forget about it. The goal becomes conserving every ounce of energy for your internal heating system. But the psychological aspect might surprise you most. Panic and anxiety actually increase heat loss through faster breathing and elevated heart rate. The Inuit developed almost meditation-like calmness during extreme cold spells. They'd focus their minds, control their breathing, and enter a state that modern science would recognize as reducing metabolic heat loss. Your extremities, fingers, toes, nose are the first casualties in extreme cold. Blood flow gets redirected to vital organs, leaving these areas vulnerable. The Inuit learned to flex and wiggle these parts just enough to maintain circulation without wasting energy. Tiny movements, maximum effect. Even facial expressions mattered. Keeping your mouth closed, relaxing facial muscles, and avoiding unnecessary talking all helped retain heat around your head and neck. Every detail counted when survival hung in the balance. The most experienced Inuit families could lower their breathing rate so dramatically that condensation barely formed inside their igloos. Less moisture meant less ice buildup, which meant better insulation throughout the night. These breathing and body control techniques didn't just help people survive, they helped entire families thrive in conditions that would kill most modern humans within hours. Ancient wisdom meeting life or death necessity, creating survival strategies that still amaze scientists today.